Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. As you all know on this committee, Texas is the backbone of America's energy security. Our oil and gas industry powers the nation. It drives the economy and provides countless jobs for hardworking Texans, particularly in districts like mine and Vice Chair Morales's and Speaker Craddock's as well. But that's really true throughout the entire state. But not to mention oil and gas production very literally funds our roads and our schools and our universities across the state. And nowhere is this type of production more evident than in the Permian Basin, which has helped make the United States the world's top energy producer. But as we've seen in states, particularly like California, energy production is under attack with bans on hydraulic fracturing and restrictions on resource extraction that threaten what fuels our prosperity. And in my view, and in the view of the constituents who brought this idea to me, Texas must not leave the door open for similar policies to take root here in this great state. And that's why I'm proud to author and present to you today HJR107, which is a proposed constitutional amendment that would protect the right to explore, produce, and export oil, gas, and other minerals in Texas. By enshrining this protection in our state constitution, we will ensure that Texas' energy future remains secure regardless of shifting political winds. To be clear, this measure does not prevent the legislature or relevant state agencies from enacting reasonable regulations to protect public health, conserve natural resources, or ensure responsible land use. That would all continue to be permitted under this proposal. And it would allow us to strike that balance that I think, Mr. Chairman, as you know, we've been able to do for decades here in Texas. So it doesn't change that. What it does do is protect Texas against sweeping bans or moratoriums that would cripple our energy industry and absolutely threaten our economy. So this does preserve the great balance that we have had for decades so that future generations of Texans can enjoy what we've been blessed to have. It also sends a strong message that Texas will stand firm against efforts to undermine our status as America's energy leader. Also, we do have a precedent for that. Those of you who have been around for a few sessions know that when we do protect through the Constitution valuable Texas institutions. Just in the last several legislative sessions, for example, we've adopted constitutional amendments that were subsequently approved by Texas voters to constitutionally protect farming and ranching or hunting and fishing, and this proposal would simply add to that list of constitutionally protected Texas institutions that are valuable for our entire great state. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions that you or the committee members may have.
Thank you for that presentation layout. Members, any questions? Chairman Landgraf? If not, we'll proceed to testimony and allow you to close.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. This time, the chair will call Julie Range. Again, good morning, Julie. We show you Julie Range. You're representing Commission Shift Action and Self, yes. And you're here testifying against HJR 107. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm
You may proceed.
Against HJR 107. So this amendment enshrines the right to engage in producing minerals, but it does not enshrine the right of citizens to be protected from the negative impacts of that production. Although the resolution allows for state or political subdivisions to make rules to protect citizens from these impacts, it does not require it. And if we're codifying our values into the state constitution, perhaps we should make access to these, to clean air, water, and a healthy environment in higher regard to access to mineral extraction. In many cases, the municipalities or the municipal regulations that protect citizens from these impacts are preempted by the state, and the state often does not do enough to protect the public health that's in the vicinity of oil and gas development. I know there's a few ranchers out in y'all's neck of the woods that have had issues with feeling not protected by these from oil and gas development. But so I'd recommend you reject this amendment.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Julie, thank you for your testimony. Chair will now call Samantha Fillmore-Vick. Samantha Fillmore Vick. Going once, twice. Okay, we're going to show you for HJR 107, but not testifying. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Joint Resolution 107? If not, the chair recognizes Chairman Landgraf to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And since it was brought up, the witness from Commission Shift, I do need to push back on that a little bit. This proposal absolutely does include a provision that protects the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Texas. It allows the state to continue to enact reasonable restrictions and regulations on the extraction, export of these minerals, and we wanted to be very clear to not take that away. Now, in terms of solving every problem that the state of Texas confronts, that is not addressed entirely by this resolution, I will admit that. I think that may have been what the implication was from the witness. Consequently, I'm working on other proposed constitutional amendments, for example, that would address some of those issues, but it's just not in HJR 107. So unless there are any questions, I would be happy to answer those, but otherwise I do close, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any questions? Oh, Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, thanks for being here today. Are you still the chair of environmental regulations?
Yes, sir.
Would you ever pass a bill through your committee that would impose unreasonable restrictions?
Haven't done it yet.
Okay. Can you, so can you define what reasonable regulation is?
Yeah, I know you're a fantastic engineer. For the lawyers on the panel, it's the reasonable person standard. So it's up to fact finders to determine that, but there are a number of precedents that have been set that establish that. So, but this is really a constitutional codification of the regulatory environment that the state has enjoyed for, literally generations at this point. But the reasonable person standard is what this would impose in terms of evaluating the regulations that would be at issue here.
It's my impression that Texas has a very favorable environment towards energy production. Is it your experience that the state, in your experience, has the state passed regulations that are overly restrictive or unreasonable?
No, and as I mentioned in the layout, this is a
To prevent
forward.
that from ever happening.
That-
But to your knowledge, has it been a problem?
Has what been a problem? I'm sorry.
The passing of restrictive regulations that are unreasonable?
Well, I do recall 10 years ago we did pass House Bill 40 that was authored by the chairman of this committee. I remember serving on this committee during that legislative session where there were burdensome regulations that created a patchwork throughout many municipalities across the state that really changed the calculus for how hydraulic fracturing could be deployed throughout the state of Texas. Thanks to House Bill 40, we have a uniform standard that applies equally all across the state, and I think it's been very effective. But that's an example of having unreasonable regulations that were addressed by the legislature and implemented through the Railroad Commission, and I think that's a great example of how this system is supposed to work.
So
and that would, to be clear, would be preserved under this proposed constitutional
So
amendment.
it sounds to me like you just told us, in the case where there may have been unintended consequences from a piece of legislation, that this body was able to remedy that without a constitutional amendment? It's a yes or no question.
Well, this is pretty hostile here. So yes, the legislature does engage in
And
policymaking
apologies.
and regulation. Yes.
Apologies if that seems hostile. It's not my intent at
Okay.
all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. But I want to make sure that I'm answering your question as well. Did that answer your question? As I mentioned in the layout, this is as all proposed constitutional amendments are. This is a forward-looking policy to make sure that regardless of legislative changes that occur, that this is so integral to what the state of Texas stands for that we want to make sure that it can endure under the same mechanisms that have made it successful for several generations in the past.
Chairman Dean.
I think, Chairman, you answered his question about the bill that took care of the fracking issues. But let's understand something. We have plenty of regulatory things already mounted on the oil and gas business, which represents the largest sector of the industry, including in your district as well. So I would say that between the Railroad Commission, the TCEQ, the state, the counties and the cities, we have plenty of layers of protection for our public. And I can assure you, being an old mayor, that we execute to make sure to protect public safety. And I don't see anything in this particular HJR that would have anything to do with compromising that. So thank you for your HJR.
Vice Chair Morales.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman, I want to make clear here, your piece of legislation that we have here before you is not going to change the precedent that it has been established with the reasonable person standard in our courts. In our
That's right.
district
That's
courts.
correct.
So you're not coming in here, and this piece of legislation is not going to codify a different set of standards or elements that the parties are going to have to now participate in the litigation process.
That's correct.
That's not what you're doing.
That's right.
That's not what this bill intends to.
I don't believe that it's in the four corners of this HJR, and it's certainly not my intention to do that.
And it doesn't change the definition of what minerals or oil and gas is with respect to the standard that has been either set by president in our district and in our appellate courts.
And as you can see, we've actually adopted the language in terms of what constitutes the mineral estate in the state of Texas and has for many, many years now. That's the exact language that's used in this proposed constitutional amendment.
Yeah, as I was going through, and it's a short bill, right? So I was
Right.
fairly surprised by its brevity also and how it's just basically, hey, we're a state that's drill, baby, drill. We want to recognize that. We want to make sure that that it's set through a constitutional amendment. This has to go to the people, right?
That's correct.
So this is one step in a number of steps for the people of Texas to make this decision whether they recognize the value that West Texas brings and all parts of Texas where we generate these oil and gas mineral interests, and that we recognize the history and the tradition of our great state. Would that be the intent that you're
Yes,
trying
sir,
to
absolutely. I
abide by?
couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, and in that regard then, is it mutually exclusive that if we are pro-oil and gas, that by definition then we have to be against clean water and clean air? Or can we mutually support those two?
No, we can absolutely support both of those. I certainly do, both personally and in my work as a legislator, and I think it's absolutely something that we can do as a state, and it's what we should always strive to do, is to do both of those things at the same time.
And isn't it a fact also that you, through your previous testimony, you intended to say that you found it so necessary that you included a provision within it that also addressed the certain regulations and safety standards that the state needed to comply with?
That's right. I wanted to be clear that we were striking that balance with this proposal as well.
Okay. And do you support clean water and clean energy and if we can and clean air at the same time?
Absolutely. And not only that, I mean, I choose to live in a major energy producing area of this state. So what happens there is, I mean, that affects the air that I breathe, the water that I drink, and of course I want that to be, I want us to have the highest standards of quality for that.
I share in those values, even, coming from, different party lines. I understand and have visited with you on many occasions and understand that the rights and the virtues and the making sure that we represent our constituency to its fullest, regardless of party affiliation, and make sure that we have clean water energy sources, clean energy, clean ability to to have fresh air is all that is important to us, especially to our folks out in West Texas. I applaud you for these efforts to recognize the history that comes with Texas and our oil and gas exploration. And I also believe that this presents a unique offer to our constituency as a whole to be able to make this decision as to whether they feel the same as some of us that represent these oil and gas counties and all that they do for us and for our great state. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that and look forward to continue working with you on both of these issues.
Yes, sir.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you. So just a quick clarification, if you will, for me.
Sure.
Line 1920 says a state agency or political subdivision when there is clear and convincing evidence. So that's different from the reasonable man standard, right? It's clear and convincing evidence.
Well-
And I'm not a lawyer, but it's
Yeah.
my understanding this is two different.
So again, not inventing anything new here. Clear and convincing is an evidentiary standard. Reasonable person is what you measure that clear and convincing evidence against.
Thank you.
So two different things, but good question. And let me apologize that your question earlier was not hostile. I kind of meant that tongue in cheek, but I wanted to be clear about that. It's a good question, and I appreciate you asking it.
I do have one question, and again, under the doctrine of unintended consequences
Yeah.
that seems to get us from time to time. You've created Section 35A in which you define mineral. Over the years, in my experience in this body and in the practice of law, these terms sometimes change as we know more about what's beneath the surface and what we're able to extract and what we're able to achieve value with. So in your definition of mineral, what would happen if somehow it was discovered that there's another substance below the ground that has value? Can the legislature add to the definition of mineral at that time without having to have a constitutional amendment?
Mr. Chairman, it's a good question, and as you're saying this, I've just made a couple of notes here. If it would be better to account for future changes to the definition of what comprises the mineral estate, if we want to change this to where instead of listing out or, including a laundry list of the minerals that would apply, if we just want to capture everything that's considered to be part of the mineral estate in Texas, I would be happy making that change. In fact, I think that would strengthen it and account for future changes that are made either by the legislature or by the courts.
Yeah. Well, from my personal point of view, I think that would be a good approach to take.
I agree.
I'm a little bit concerned about definitions seem to change from time to time, and we want to make sure we don't by exact language discourage the development of a potential valued source at some point in the future. So
I think it's a good change, Mr. Chairman, and this just goes to show if you want a better bill, just get the Darby treatment on it. I do think that would be better, and I'm happy to work with you to tighten that up to make sure that we're accounting for future changes and also including a more accurate definition.
well, your flattery is appreciated.
No, it's
but,
not flattery, it's just the truth.
But certainly, we're here collaborative together to try to make the best laws we can.
And I appreciate
And
that.
not create problems for future folks who sit behind this dais. So anyway, thank you for your bill. Members, any other questions? If not.
I
you
close, Chairman. Thank you.
Close. Members, if there's no objection, HJR 107 will be left pending. Is there objection? Here's none, and the bill is left pending. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 1335 and recognizes Representative Gertis to explain his bill. Thank you. You may proceed.